Yes, the visuals aren't as important. So hopefully you'll be able to understand just by my talking through it. So first of all, this is not the official T891 approach. This is my own perspective about these three central activities within the T891 framework. But hopefully it might help all of you understand a little bit more their role within a systemic approach to environmental decision making. Okay, so we've got our situation of interest. Okay, the situation of interest, that's the flux. Okay, that's what you see in the real world. That's the tip of the iceberg above the water, right? And when we go into our framework, we take information out of the flux. Okay, so this is the process of engagement, right? This is sweeping in information from the flux into our own understanding, okay? And so the questions we ask about engagement is, how free is your engagement? You know, how many prejudices do you have that selectively choose the kind of information that you bring in to the framework, to the decision-making framework? How deep is your engagement? What is the detail of information that you go into? Okay, how big is your big picture? Right, and so we'll might talk a little bit more about this when we engage with techniques such as cost-benefit analysis or indicators such as GDP. How big is the pool of information that you're drawing from? Okay. And crucially, how many perspectives are you engaging with, right? And so that's the action of engaging, right, in the framework. And having brought in the information, then you're tasked with evaluating. So that was the question, right? What role does evaluation have within the framework? Okay, this is where you identify what is important within the massive information that you have swept in, right? So this is where you establish the criteria for making your boundary judgment. You know, what's important to consider and what is insignificant information that you throw back out into the flux. Okay. Having done the evaluation, you are now ready to model. Okay, you've established your criteria for your boundary, and with that information, you are able to start understanding the situation. So you're creating a simplified representation of reality. And our key model is what we call system of interest. So that's a model of a situation with some pretty special characteristics. Okay, it's a collection of parts that interact to function as a whole, and it's got a purpose. Okay, so the models that we create, the systems of interest that we identify, they have a clear boundary around the system of interest that distinguishes the system from the environment, and it receives inputs. There's a transformation that occurs, and it produces outputs back into the environment. Okay, so that's really every model is a system of interest, and every system of interest is a model. Okay, and however, systems of interest are not real. They're determined by our values, by our aspirations, experiences of the modeler or modelers, if these understandings are created collaboratively. Now, crucially, it's a learning cycle, okay? As the wider T891 framework is a learning cycle, nested within that, we also have a mini learning cycle too. So you engage with the information from the flux, you evaluate that information. That allows you to build models of the situation, and models then are a basis for action back in the flux. Having acted, the situation changes, so you engage with new information again, you evaluate it, you create new models, then you act again. Okay, and so once again, we have a learning cycle. Now, this to me is how it all fits together. So when we talk about evaluation, we are essentially talking about deciding what information is important, what criteria do we establish for what is in our system of interest, and then we use that to model things. So if we go to the techniques book, okay, we've got some specific modeling techniques, evaluation techniques highlighted, okay, and like boundary judgments, okay, and these are techniques that allow you to decide what information is important. And some of these techniques can be about evaluating the process of decision making. Some of these techniques can be about evaluating the outputs of decision making, the techniques that are used. You know, it's all about how, from each of these aspects, how the information is selected, and you deciding what is important and what isn't, and what isn't important. Sinead, I'll turn this off, and then we'll